feel like sitting down listening some more. You know, some of your greatest students are your best teachers, because there's nothing like learning. And matter of fact, that's what I started off with on that slide. But what I would like to open with is a poem by a friend of mine by the name of Listervelt Middleton. How many have ever heard of Listervelt Middleton? Okay, there's one. He passed away a few years ago. Time going by so quick, I hate to say exactly how many, but 3 or 4 years ago. He was a very good friend of mine, and it was through knowing Listervelt that I was put on the path that I'm on now. I was exposed to a lot of information and knowledge from illustrious elders that I never got enough of, and I found myself on that path. I wondered, how did they remember all the things that they remember? How could they remember all of this? God, I never heard this. And it was as fascinating for me now as it was then. And I still have the desire to go forward, share the information that I have learned with others, the same information that helped me grow. You know, it said earlier, to know better is to do better. So if our knowledge doesn't cause us to change in any positive way, do we really know what we think we know? And I heard it said that none of us is so dumb as those of us who think we know. So we've got to know. But anyway, I think Brother Pierre and the Hall of Maat, I think it's very, very important, and it shows the high degree of respect that we have for ourselves when we can create institutions like this to come and get the lessons that we need. And this is what I call the Hall of Maat. It is a serious institution. Brother Pierre has began a serious institution, because what you are getting here today and past times and in the future, you're not going to get in any school. You're not going to get in any universities that were set up in the West. And so you can't get angry when you don't get it, because those things we're supposed to get for ourselves. Speaking on that wise, Carter G. Woodson, in his miseducation of the Negro, as it was called then, miseducated. And the reason we were miseducated is because we've depended on somebody else to give us that education that don't look like us, that don't have our interest at heart. They expressed their interest from the very beginning. I read a quote, was in a document from the Dutch West India Company, and they were heavy in the slave trade. And they said they had one purpose for bringing us here. That was their purpose, all right? The Creator has other purposes, but their purpose, as they stated, was to work us until our natural death, period. They didn't make any mistake about it. So I think if they should be very clear-cut about that, I've got to be very clear-cut about that too, so I know what to expect and what not to expect. So if you're looking for education, the best and the highest education, as Carter G. Woodson says here, you'll get for yourself. Let me share it with you. It says, philosophers have long conceded, however, that every man has two educations, that which is given to him, and the other that which he gives himself. Of the two kinds, the latter is by far the more desirable. Indeed, all that is most worthy in a man, he must work out and conquer for himself. It is that which constitutes our real and best nourishment. What we are merely taught seldom nourishes the mind like that which we teach ourselves. And I thought that was very good food for thought, Carter G. Woodson. So I read that and I was inspired even more to seek knowledge for myself, to know for myself. The ancients told us in the admonition over the temple, over the portal of the temple, what? Know who? Know thyself. You've got to know yourself better than anybody else. And I seek to know myself, all right, better than anybody else. And I seek to know others as well as they know themselves. You see, like Sun Tzu said, when you know yourself and you know the enemy, you can fight 1,000 battles and you can win every one of them, because you know yourself and you know your enemy. And if you know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you have a good 50-50 chance of winning battles. But if you know not yourself and you know not your enemy, you don't have a snowball's chance and you know where winning. All right? So we've got to know these things. In a poem I'd like to share with you from Listervelt, it is concerning some of the greatest lies that's ever been told. And he passed away. He's a great poet, big heart, great poet, very profound in his thinking. He used to wake me up at some time, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd call and say, "Hey, brother, I got another one. And I'd sit and listen to it, and I always felt privileged that he would call me and share this with me. And so I share it with you. But this one that I'd like to open with is called Encyclopedia. And he says, when we classify man by color, the only one of the primary races which has not made a creative contribution to any of our 21 civilizations is the black race, as quoted by Arnold Toynbee, Study of History, his story, no doubt. Some of the biggest lies ever told have been bound with leather and printed with gold. Careful, black child, what you read. Books are bags full of seeds, waiting for the place and time to sprout inside a fertile mind. Vigilant eyes will pierce the scheme to deify the European. Encyclopedia by Listervelt Middleton. I thought express that and go ahead and use my show and tell to help me get my message across. But anyway, I'll always start out with, I'm a book person. But I'm still reminded through Listervelt's poem that even being a book person, be careful what you read. All right? So we've got to do comparative study, we've got to search, and then we've got to research. Oh, you need a line. We need a line. Okay. That's right. That's even better. All right? But I found this poster, and I decided to take a picture of it. They were giving them away at Church's Chicken, I think. And I hope that somebody got that message as well as I did, because I asked for one. They had it in the window. But quench your thirst for knowledge, and sometime I felt like that about books. If I could just lay on them and sleep on them and, you know, get all I can get from them, all from those messages. We admonish from our ancestors to open the books that our ancestors left and read them, for one's mind is trained through knowledge. So reading is very important. Matter of fact, nobody knew that, I think expressed that better than Frederick Douglass. Maybe as good, but not better than Frederick Douglass. And I like to use Frederick Douglass in opening for purposes like that and speaking of that, because he was somebody who lived during chattel slavery, who lived in slavery, who was a slave, and who lived to write and tell about it, so that we don't have any mistake. Regardless of what anybody says, Frederick Douglass was a slave. And Frederick Douglass examined the mechanisms, the dynamics of slavery. What did it take to make a slave? All right? And he found out that one of the main things that slavery is predicated upon is ignorance. If you are ignorant, then you can be enslaved. That's why it says an enlightened mass is not easily subdued. So therefore, ways must be found to create that state of ignorance that will bring about that slave mentality. So Frederick Douglass lived through it and then wrote to tell about it. In his autobiography, The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass, for those who haven't read it, I suggest that you read that, because we have a serious responsibility. Since we see that nobody's going to teach our children like we would, then it's incumbent upon us to read and study as much as we can so that they can see us reading and studying, and then we'll have something to tell them and to tell others, to tell our friends, but you can only get it that way. Anyway, when he was a young boy, he related when he was a young boy how that the slave master's wife, all right, had hard enough and felt sorry enough to teach him how to read. Said she thought it was cute for a little slave boy to learn how to read. So she decided to take the Bible and teach him how to read from the Bible. All right, and I thought it was very significant that she would take the Bible to teach him to read from, and it shows something that they already knew. But anyway, it said that Captain All came in. That's what he was called, Thomas All. Captain All came in and caught her sitting down, giving him lessons. So it says that he forbade her to give me any further instructions, telling her in the first place that to do so was unlawful. Well, what is the law? Who writes the law? You see what I'm saying? For them, it said it was unlawful, as it was also what? Unsafe. Unsafe. Don't teach him how to read. That's unsafe. For, said he, if you give a nigger an inch, that was the term at that time, because I don't use N-word. If they said nigger, I say they said nigger. All right, and those who have a problem with that evidently have some things to work out. If you give a nigger an inch, he will take an L. An L is like an elbow from here to the tip of the finger. If you give him an inch, he will take an L, which meant that they know that given half the chance, we would take it and expand on it, run away with it. It said, learning will spoil the best nigger in the world. So you want to know how to get rid of this nigger mentality, how to get rid of the nigger attitude, how to get rid of this condition that I set this picture up here to show you. This is a brother. I found this in a magazine. It was about that big, and I saw that, and it spoke a lesson to me immediately. Because here's a brother here who don't have dreadlocks, but he has chains on the brain, which I call deadlocks. Each one of these chains is locked to some lie. Each one of these chains is locked to some deception somewhere, all right? And in order to break free, we've got to break these chains that bind our mind. Here's where we're held in between the ears. How many of you saw The Matrix? Everybody saw The Matrix, all right? And you remember when they had the brother, his name in the movie was Morpheus, right? Lawrence Fishburne playing Morpheus. And there was one time that I noticed when the two white men, the quote-unquote bad guys, caught him and subdued him, he taught them everything he knew. Just like we have learned in this series that has been going on this weekend, Brother Quasey laid out so well and all. We have seen how we taught the world. You see what I'm saying? As Duke Ellington say, and we've given it, so freely. Because we always know where we get it from. You can never exhaust the source. We knew that. Just like he was saying, when we speak the name of Jesus, we're calling down solar energy, right? Who can exhaust solar energy? Who can take all of it up? Nobody. It was here when we got in to be here when we're gone. All right? But anyway, he says here that learning will spoil the best nigger in the world. So when I tell people, they say, what do you do? I say, I destroy niggers. I destroy niggers. Niggers is a political creature. It is a created being. All right? So therefore, by me saying that I destroy niggers, and it caused people to jolt them right quick to say, what did he do? Go around, he's a mass murderer, he's a killer, or what? No. In spoiling or destroying niggers, what we're doing is raising conscious levels. When you raise conscious levels, then you destroy that particular mentality that's been produced through ignorance. If he learns to read the Bible, Thomas All knew something. These people weren't dumb like some people think they were, or as they say, well, that's just the way things were at that time, as if they didn't know any better. Thomas All knew better, because he said if he learns to read the Bible, it will forever do what? Unfit him to be a slave. If he learns how to read it. Now, there are a lot of people who read it that don't know how to read it. And it hadn't taken them from slavery to freedom yet. It said, you shall know the truth in there, and the truth shall make you free. If that be the case and they're reading the truth, then why are they still bound up? You see, why are they still bound up? All right? Because nobody ever taught them how to read it. All right? Because in reading the Bible, he would have dispelled the lie that black people had no souls. Why is that? How could they have no souls and just be filled in the lore, filled in the writings of the Bible? Matter of fact, the question is, where do the white people fit in here? All right? But he said if he learns to read the Bible, it will forever unfit him to be a slave. He should know nothing but the will of his master. He should know nothing but the will of his master. And learn to obey it. As to himself, learning will do him no good, but a great deal of harm, making him disconsolate and unhappy. Knowledge would make him unhappy. Unhappy with what? It would make him unhappy with his condition, with his situation. And you know, once he realized what his situation was, it said that he's going to want to get out of that condition. Harriet Tubman made a statement when they were bestowing accolades upon her and honoring her for the work that she had done in leading 300 and some odd slaves to freedom. She said that was really nothing. She said she could have led hundreds of more if she could have convinced them that they were slaves. See, it's hard to help somebody who don't know the condition that they're in. As the brother said earlier, it's hard to help somebody get out of a situation if they don't want to get out, if they don't see what they need to get out. So Harriet Tubman says she could have saved a whole lot more from slavery if she could have only convinced them that they were slaves. So even then you had those who didn't realize that they were in slavery. They thought that that was, you know, the way life was supposed to be. All right? And this is one of the reasons why I have seen that even during so-called Black History Month, that they don't really teach black history. They teach the history of the civil rights movement. They tell you very little of what was going on with us before slavery. Did we exist, or did we have a life before slavery? Or are we to believe that we were, as AT&T showed it in an advertisement? I started to put it in here, but I said, God, I got to cut this down a little bit. But I don't know if you remember the advertisement they had where they showed lines being hooked up all over the world for worldwide communications, and they showed the people in the Netherlands in their little Dutch outfits, and then they showed the Italians in their outfits, and then over on the... But when it got to Africa, they showed a monkey talking on the phone. You see what I'm saying? AT&T. I got the slide. I took it out, but they showed a monkey. So we have got to know who's who and what's what. Because if we don't, somebody else will tell our story, and as any amnesiac would have a problem negotiating the culture and who he is, if you don't know who you are, you're who anybody tells you you are. All right? But anyway, it said it will cause him to be disconsolate and unhappy. If you teach him how to read, he will want to know how to write. He's not going to want to just know that little bit. So where does this thing come from that we don't have the aptitude for learning? We don't have the aptitude to learn this and to learn that. Slaves didn't know how to read then. We were docile, incapable of learning things. Oh, he knew it very well. That's why they had to make a law against it. He knew very well in reading. I'm sure he went to school. Don't think that they didn't go to school and they didn't learn real serious history. Don't think that they didn't travel around the world. These people came from all over the world and created this institution that's got us in this confusion. All right? They were well learned. Many of the Southerners were more well learned than the Northern whites. They could afford to send their children off to the European universities. And when they went over there, they saw different things, and they came back and they knew, God, we can't let them know this. I'm sure they were aghast when they saw a lot of the artwork that they saw. If they went to school in France, if they went to school in England, if they went to school in any European country, they saw these things, they knew these things. It said he'll want to know how to write. And this accomplished, when he learns how to read and how to delineate his thoughts, how to convey his thoughts to others, it says, what's the next step? He will run away with himself. He won't be a slave. That's how we know they hang here, because they don't know any better. And if they know better, I'm sure they will do better. All right? But that was just a little thought from Frederick Douglass, who experienced that whole situation. And of course he said here too, that a man without force is without the essential dignity of humanity. We've got to have force. We've got to understand, as the brother said earlier, we've got to understand and cultivate spiritual force above all. But then we need to understand all force. But it says, Frederick Douglass, that a man without force is without the essential dignity of humanity. It said human nature is so constituted that it cannot honor a helpless man, though it can pity him. And even this it cannot do for long if the signs of power do not arise. Wade Nobles gave a very good definition for power. Number one, it's not only being able to knock somebody out with one blow physically, but power, as he defined it, is the ability to name yourself, to define yourself, and have others accept your definition as if it were their own. So therefore, whatever we call ourselves, when we have come into the power that we need, then that means we are who we say we are. As the brother said earlier, alluded to, I am that I am. And it's not what you call me, but what I choose to answer to, you see. So therefore, we have got to have that type of power to be able to name ourselves, all right, and to define ourselves. That's why I don't buy into the name calling me minorities. You know, there are people who use that and talking about, well, minority is this and minority is that. Even on the JOB that I work on, all right, these supposed to be knowledgeable people, but when they call me that, they don't know me, and I don't answer to it. I don't mark it. I don't identify with that, because minority is just another way of calling you a boy or a girl. Have you ever looked up the word minority since you've been called that? Look it up in the dictionary and see what it says. Look at it. It means one who has not attained the age of majority. That means you haven't reached 21. So until you reach 21 in the society it says attain the age of majority is called, you're still a minority or a what? A boy or a girl. And of course that was the big thing. Don't call me no boy. Okay, we'll just call you minority. How you like that? You see? We'll just call you that. We'll put the same soup in a different bowl. See how you like that? Okay? Now, we come here, another quote that I'd like to use in my lead off here is Dr. Cain Hope Felder, professor at Howard University School of Divinity. In other words, divinity or theological seminary. But anyway, Dr. Cain Hope Felder said, over the years, African Americans have been introduced to a form of Christianity that was largely recast. That means it was cast from another mold. It was similar to what we were familiar with, but it was cast from another mold. It says they're recast through European culture. It was recast through European culture. So that in the 15th century, I think it was Pope Martin V, that commissioned Michelangelo to paint the so-called Holy Family at the Sistine Chapel, and then he decided to use for models his his cousin and his family. They had models. That's who that was. But anyway, this is where the molds start being recast, all right, through European culture. Who's that said that anytime you worship a God that don't look like you, then you're in trouble. Not looking like you. So it was important for them to change that, to change those images. Images are everything. Whoever controls the image controls the imagination. And this is what we want to take control of again, our own imagination, our own children's imaginations through the images that we present to them. Hence, the brother pulled together here the Black Christ Conference. All right? So we can look at this in all different ways. Spiritually, we can look at it from a natural standpoint or what have you. But we have got to look at it and dissect it and, kill this lie once and for all. All right? But anyway, we are going back and recovering what was always there. I don't have anything new to show you. Everything I have to show you is old stuff. Ancient things, old things that's always been here, but just been kept away from us. All right? As simple as this story is, it's not being told and it's not being put across on a mass scale like it should. Why aren't the preachers dealing with this? As the brother said earlier, you know, as opposed to preachers, why don't we have more teachers? All right? We're going back and recovering what was always there. The question isn't where are the blacks in the Bible, but the question is, where are the whites in the Bible? You see what I'm saying? And come to find out through reading Dr. Carter G. Woodson, when he came up with what was called then Negro History Week, he said it wasn't for us. He said it was to let white folks know what we've been doing all this time. So when they say, well, they gave us the shortest month of the year, they didn't give you anything. Carter G. Woodson chose that. He chose that in February because that was the month that Frederick Douglass was born in and Abraham Lincoln was born in, since they had cast him as a great emancipator, but we know that since to be a big fat lie. You see what I'm saying? Serious racist he was. So he was to assign him the superior position to the race that he was a member of. Then we have some doubts about that too. J. Rogers brought some light on that, and included him in one of the 5, as he called them then, Negro presidents. All right? So as Dr. Ben said at times, you walking around looking for the white in me, I'm going to look for the black in you. All right? But anyway, here we have familiar face here, Dr. Charles Cofer. They did a newspaper article. He wrote an article in, was interviewed for this article, but it says, scholars, Africa's role in the Bible ignored, but blacks getting their point across. And so this was Dr. Charles Cofer, who brought a lot of this information to light. I got a chance to see him before old age finally just took over. But I got a chance to hear him, and he brought out a lot. But Africa's role has been methodically ignored, all right? But it will continue to be ignored until you raise the issue, until you stop the buck here, as they say. Of course, we have articles here, this one, Christ as a black man, the black Christ not worthy of his cross. But anyway, Christ is a black man. Now, Christ is not a name, it's a title. It says now what they really mean, Jesus is a black man. But Christ is a title, meaning anointed, as was mentioned earlier, coming from the Greek Christos, meaning to be anointed. But where did the Greeks get theirs from? Where did they get that idea from? They got it from Egypt. You read not J.A. Rogers, I meant Gerald Massey, Ancient Egypt, Light of the World. You can get this book now. I remember when you couldn't get it. It's called Ancient Egypt, Light of the World. You want to get in depth with this and really see? By Gerald Massey and Black Classic Press, re-released it. They got the plates from one of the Jewish publishers. But anyway, Ancient Egypt, the Light of the World. And you'll find out in there that the word Christ comes from the ancient Kemetic word kras, like K-R-S-T it would sound. K-R-S-T, kras, which meant the anointed Sahu, or the anointed mummy. The whole Jesus story, when it's told, as it has been told to us, talks about it was a little baby who was born in a manger, where the animals, in the barn, where the animals ate from the manger, and it said that he was wrapped in what? Swaddling clothes. What are swaddling clothes? I went for many years not knowing what that word meant until I started studying and found out swaddling clothes were the bandages that they were called, that they wrapped mummies with. These yards and miles of bandages that they meticulously wrap the bodies with, that even now many are still preserved. And we had some grave robbers who went and unwrapped them so that they could see what they look like. I guess one day we'll go up to Arlington Cemetery and have a ball, won't we? But that's really not our thing. But anyway, that's what swaddling clothes is. Now, swaddling clothes came straight out of Egypt. That whole concept came from Egypt. So just by them saying swaddling clothes, all right, we are dealing with an African concept here, if we know that to be so, all right? So kras meant the anointed Sahu, or the anointed mummy, who's anointed to be what? resurrected again from the dead level to the living perpendicular. And of course we know again that all of this comes straight out of Africa. In other words, you see where it's most red, that's down in the Nile Valley, at the beginning of the Nile, the headwaters, from where the goddess who? Happy dwells. That's where we get the word happy, where happy dwells. Everything is lush, as he showed last night about how the river compasses the land of Ethiopia and all, was called the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Plenty, the Garden of luxury, what have you. But anyway, it started there, and as you see how the arrow goes up, spread it along the Nile, all right, all the way up, and then from the Nile, as you can see in the same way, it spread over, the spread of human ancestors, beginning at the Nile Valley, going up, crossing over the Arabian Peninsula, and then spreading out on over into the east. And by the way, as mentioned earlier, how brother mentioned they were in Tibet, real impressive that you had religious leaders and practitioners from all, spiritualists from all over, from all walks, from all religions who come together, who saw the big picture. And as Al-Yetzi said, all faith is true, all faith is false. Faith is a mirror scattered and strewn, while each thinks his little bit is the whole to own. But they came and put it all together, and therefore you see the big picture. But African influence was felt all over in Asia and Europe. Matter of fact, the Buddhists, as I have studied and learned, went to school in Egypt. You see what I'm saying? Krishna, another word derived from that cross. All right, Krishna, the black one. All right, they studied in Egypt. And as they went out as avatars, all right, as prophets, all right, as learned ones who had attained a high state of spiritual consciousness, went out and began to propagate in some way the building up of, as the Yoruba say, Iwa Pele, a good character. The main thing that our spiritual teachings teach us is our relationship to each other. All right? And our relationship with each other really tells our relationship with God. All right? Through each other. But anyway, this is just a quick view of sort of like some review here. All right? Now, in the 18th century, a French academician in the highest of standing, all right, among scholars, European scholar academicians that is, once wrote, and this is from Ruins of Empire by Count Constantine Francis Chesebov-Valny. He accompanied Napoleon into North Africa on his campaign of pillage and plunder. And Count Valny, as a scholar, he had to open his eyes and see what he saw. And he said here, in his book, Ruins of Empires, preface of the first edition, there are people now forgotten, discovered while others were yet barbarians. The elements of the arts and science, a race of men now rejected for their black skin and their woolly hair, founded on the study of the laws of nature. All right? Those civil, the root word for what? Civilization. Those civil and religious systems which still governs the universe. All right? Now that's the way a summary of Valny's statement read. But guess what? I want to share with you tonight, I was able to run up on, in my searches, an original C.F. Valny ruins, written in 1789. Wow. Ain't nothing like getting your hands for a researcher and a historian to get his hand on some original documents. I found this out in Buckhead. I mean, when you say hide, it was up in a corner. You know, I always go to where they got the quote-unquote black stuff. And so it was a little ledge back in the corner. And so the way the titles were written, you know, I had to sit here and read like this all day, my head twisted. And I saw the words on the back here say ruins. And that was only one ruins that I knew. I said, no, it can't be. And I went and looked up on it, and sure enough, it was Ruins of Empires. But I said it was another reprint with this nice binder on it and all. And I took it and opened it up, and what did, lo and behold, it was the original. It was the original English publication. C.F. Volney was a Frenchman, so the first one was in French. So it had to be translated, and this is the one of 1801. All right? This is the one that you hear talk about, but I didn't see. But let me share with you how it was written originally. All right? And Ruins of Empires. That's a powerful statement that this man noticed. So why are we still asking questions like, is Cleopatra black, or was Ramesses black, or was he... You got all of this back from 1801. The man was there. All right? And it says here, the genius proceeded to point out the different objects to me with his finger, and to develop them as he proceeded. These heaps of ruins, said he, that you observe in this narrow valley laved by the Nile, are all that remain of the opulent cities that gave luster to the ancient kingdom of Ethiopia. And by the way, according to Dr. Chancellor Williams, in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, Egypt is Ethiopia's oldest daughter. All right? Egypt came out of Ethiopia, or let me say developed out of Ethiopia. So that's why we have to go back so deep, even down to the bottom in the valley of the mountain of the moon, where the goddess Happy dwells, where the blue and the white Nile originate and give birth to the Nile River, where these Lake Tana and Lake Nyanza, is it called? I forget, but they call them Lake Victoria and Lake Albert. I don't know how the Queen of England and the King of England got to have a lake over there, but they just take it. They name it and they claim it. Okay? But we understand the Africans had a name too. But anyway, it says here, here is the monument of its splendid metropolis, Thebes, with its 100 palaces, the progenitor of cities. You know what progenitor means? Progenitor, the first one to start building cities. This is what C.F. Volney, who went in with Napoleon, while Napoleon was looking to see what he could steal, C.F. Volney was looking at all this and going, my God, these people are the one that started cities, started civilization, the laws that, laws of nature, those civil and religious systems which still govern the universe, the religions that we still practice. All right? So it says here, the memento of human frailty. It was there. Here's how this reads in the original book. It was there that a people, since forgotten, discovered the elements of the science and art at a time when all other men were barbarous, and that a race now regarded as the refuse of society, regarded as the refuse of society because their hair is woolly and their skin is dark, explored among the phenomena of nature those civil and religious systems which have since held mankind in awe. Said the refuse of society they were regarded as. But that's from the original book, from C.F. Volney's book, Ruins of Empires. And then it goes on down to state something else, to set the record straight. Volney adds from his book, Voyages in Syria and Egypt, as you see it's still, the title is still in French, but the translation is English. It says, this race of blacks is the very one to which we owe our arts and our sciences, and what else? Even the use of what? The spoken word. We learn how to talk from these people. All right? Well, guess what? Ruins of Empires wasn't the only book there with it. There were 3 of them. Ruins of Empires, and then I found the other one, Volney's Travels in Syria and Egypt. And this one was written, let me share with you, 1797. 1797. And when I look at these, I look at them in reference to historical events. What else was going on when Saint-Valin was writing this? The Haitian Revolution. Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, and all of them was fighting. And they was, they was kicking butt down in Haiti. It was either sink or swim, it was either live free or die. And that was the fervor that they went at it. That was going on at the time that Saint-Valin was writing this. Also at the time Saint-Valin was writing this, what else was going on? The desecration of African effigies, the desecration of African artwork, the desecration of African symbols. As Brother Quasey showed last night in some of the slides that he had, you've seen some where it looked like all the statues can be in perfect condition, but the nose is always knocked off, or the lips are always knocked off, but the ears would always stay intact. The beards, the pharaonic beards would be intact, and they seem to be more, let's say, brittle or frail than the noses and the lips. So that meant that that was a serious effort that was carried on to knock the noses, to get rid of those African features, because Saint-Valin said, these are the people that gave us the civil and religious principles which still governs the universe. They gave us the science, they gave us the arts, everything that we want. Not only Valin went there, but also one named Volta. You've heard of Volta before. Volta is the one who is credited with coming up with the dry cell battery. Volta, volts. Well, when did he come up with it? After he went to Egypt. Why? Because they found out that they were doing what? That they were generating electromagnetic energy. How do you think that they could make statues and the mask and all that they did out of gold, and it looked like no handiwork, it looked like they were electroplated? How did they get those type of finishes? I work in metallurgy. I'm a sheet metal mechanic. And there's certain processes and all, you can't get certain looks and textures and so forth unless you use these processes. Well, they were using them back then. There's a brother by the name of Nur Ankh Amin who wrote a book called The African Origins of Electromagnetic Energy. All right? And electromagnetic energy is very powerful. There are some things that's being done with wellness, with healing, done with electromagnetic energy, and also something else. The energy from the sun is called far infrared. Far infrared has some serious advantages when it comes down to healing your body. And the Japanese have taken it to a very high level, and we're going to be dealing with some of that in a couple of weeks to come. All right? So be on the lookout for that, to share this. I had to go up north to get it. Nobody was going to bring it down here. I guess they scared of us. I said, well, I ain't scared of you. I'm coming up here to get it. As Ntozake Shange said, I want my stuff back. But anyway, and it says here, and even the use of the spoken word. And let me share that with you from the original writing. It's something about that original text that just add a little more color. Sometimes they use euphemism. You know, they didn't tell us that they regarded us as the refuse of society in this one, but it told us that in the other book, in the original writing. So here it says here concerning the language, behold the present barbarism and ignorance of the Copts. Who are the C-O-P-T-S, Copts? Coptic Church, all right? So he's, in his observation, he said the present barbarism and ignorance of the Copts descended from the profound genius of the Egyptians. So we are told here by this early academician who went there while a lot of stuff that was intact then is not intact now that he saw, all right? He said here that these descended from the profound genius of the Egyptians and the brilliant, he says, intelligence of the Greeks. But we know better than that, all right, from the other writings, from the earlier writings, even from the Greeks themselves. One said that only gods come from Africa, all right? So it says here, when we reflect that to the race of Negroes, at present our slaves, see, they was involved in the slave trade then. He said these people are at present our slaves and the objects of our extreme contempt. We owe our arts, sciences, and even the very use of speech. And then we hear that English is really an African dialect. When we understand that, it doesn't seem so far-fetched. If we gave them the use of the spoken word, the use of language. Matter of fact, just using up here, we think nature is English. Nature is meduneta, a medunecha. Necha meaning the gods. Neta, meduneta, the writings of the gods. Neta, nature. Mother Nature means Mother God. Look at that. Just a few to pick out. But then we come here after hearing this and relating to what C.F. Volney saw, we've heard that we come into the story of who the Greeks call Asclepius. Or he was also called the Prince of Peace at one time also. Just like Akhenaten was called the Prince of Peace. Then Jesus is given the attributes of the Prince of Peace. All right? But anyway, this man here lived during about 2700 BC, along with Pharaoh Joseph, and he was called the world's first recorded multi-genius. All right? First recorded multi-genius. And remember, biblically, we're dealing with the Black Christ Conference, but we're going from one point to get there. And it's said how that he was first recorded multi-genius. And remember, in the Bible it says, when we say the Bible, we talk about King James, most of us are familiar with that, how it says, out of Egypt have I called my son. All right? And you remember when they got after him, he had to get out of town. Herod was after him. And it says what? It said, go and take the young child and his mother and go where? To Egypt. Now, if he'd been a little pink white baby, he'd have stood up like a you-know-what in the punch bowl, right? These are the people that were there. These are some of their most celebrated ones that have lived through antiquity, through the utterance of their name. For it's said to speak of the dead is to make them live again. As long as we say Imhotep, then Imhotep is still living. But the Greeks didn't tell us they called him Imhotep. Because in the Hippocratic oath, Hippocratic, it turns out to be the same thing. But anyway, in the Hippocratic oath that doctors took, they gave reverence and homage to the god who? Asclepius. Asclepius turned out to be the god that they made Imhotep into. But Imhotep wasn't the first physician in record. Imhotep gave homage to his grandfather who was a physician. All right? Not only was he a physician, but he was also an architect, the Grand Vizier. He did so many things so well. He's the one who designed this step pyramid for Pharaoh Joseph. All right? And not only the step pyramid, but the court that went around it. There's some other pictures of it. If you see the whole court, it's brilliant. This is what was going on. Now, we don't have any slavery. We don't have no slavery. No Tarzan. None of that. And then through the celestial stories, as we were told, we come down with Isis and her baby who came via Immaculate Conception, Heru, or Horus, where we get the name hero from. All right? But anyway, this is a classic pose right here. Isis, all right, and Heru or Horus with the princely lock on the side. This is where in Judaism they get that from, wearing that lock on the side. All right? From that princely lock right there. And when he grew up and became matured and he came into manhood, then they shaved that lock off in a rites of passage ceremony. But that was the princely lock. All right? And but this is Isis, all right, the predecessor of Mary. All right? Mary means beloved. You find in some definitions they tell you that Mary means bitter. Mary doesn't mean bitter. Mary means beloved. Brother read some of the hieroglyphics off last night, and he mentioned the word Mary in the glyph, which in translation meant beloved. All right? So if your name is Mary, that means that you are beloved, not bitter. Okay? But anyway, that is the prototype for Jesus and Mary. And as he said, Jesus is a solar name. Matter of fact, in one study I found, I-E-S-U-S, Isus. Isu means the coming son. The coming son that's reborn every day. All right? And then you have the one here. This is Akhenaten, who brought to us one of the first recorded to practice what we call today monotheism. All right? Who set up the Trinity and monotheism. But then, was he really the father of monotheism? Because they knew the one great one was the great Amen. Amen means the hidden one. And Ra, the sun, was his most powerful, visible manifestation. And they recognized that from these light came life. I am the light and the life. Said who? The Son, Jesus. All right? The light and the life. You get cut off from that light, you can't have no life. You can't grow in the dark. The only thing growing in the dark is mushroom. And that's a fungus among us. All right? But anyway, that's Akhenaten, who was Amenhotep IV. All right? Then you had some others, notables in Egypt, was Ramses II, who supposedly was the Pharaoh during the time of Moses. That's what Cecil B. DeMille told us. But we found out in other studies that that's a lie. But anyway, when they showed them to us, Cecil B. DeMille's in Hollywood, and by the way, everybody know what Hollywood is. Hollywood is the wood that they use to make the magicians and witches' wands out of. All right? Deck the halls with bars of holly, fa la 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 la. Well, that's what they use, the holly bush. And the holly bush is dedicated to the goddess Hel, the Scandinavian goddess Hel, the goddess of the underworld. And the goddess, and this was represented by the red berries on it, which represents, they tied that to the menstrual flow. And then the male counterpart to the holly branch is called what? Mistletoe. All right? And you know all kind of things took place under the mistletoe. They say kissing, but that and a whole lot of other things. But they identified that with the male part because of the white berries representing male fluid, seminal fluid. All right? Red and white. But anyway, that's what Hollywood is about, putting a spell on you. It's not about educating you and lifting you up from degradation. It's about keeping you there through images. Because when they made that, they had knowledge of all this then. They knew that that was Ramses II with his favorite wife, Nefertari. And she was from up south, all right, as a Nubian. You see what color she is. You see how Ramesses looking. He wasn't from as deep as she was, but they were all people of color. They were all people of a Stygian hue, as they say. All right, African people. But they would not show you that on television. But then they're not supposed to. That's why they call it live vision. All right? But that's Ramses II and his wife, Nefertari. Then that is, again, the mummy of Ramses II. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, you can read about it in his book called Civilization of Barbarism. He laid some of his scientific findings out. Nobody at UNESCO would check him out. He and Theophile Obenga went to the UN. They wanted to argue this polygenetic theory. In other words, many beginnings for man. When we understand that the oldest living fossil they found in East Africa, I showed you where it began. So they wanted to carry on about one began here and this race began there and that race began there. So in dispelling the polygenetic theory, he had it laid out. He and Theophile Obenga showed up at the UN and none of the other white scholars showed up. All right? But he used a certain test to test for the melanin granules in his skin to tell you that these were black people. All right? African people. Okay? And you can see the bandages around his hand, and this mummy is thousands of years old. Millennium. All right? And they had the science of embalming down. All right? And you see the swaddling clothes that he was bandaged in. Those bandages are called swaddling. This is what Jesus, when he was born, was wrapped in swaddling and laid in a manger, which had serious significance. Another one, dealing with faces and places in Egypt. This one is called Nefertiti. And most of the time, all the dependents that we've been sold and that we buy and the little things that we have, talking about great African queens, they always show you this European-looking woman over here. And that was found in a German artist's basement. But the way Nefertiti was described by the African artists in ancient Egypt, that, as the brother was so emphasized the other night, carved in stone, because they knew we were going to need to come back to this one day. They carved the likeness of Nefertiti in stone, with her locks and with her apricoid features, as they are called. Her lips, her almond eyes, her high cheekbones. Nobody can tell you that that was anything other than a beautiful black sister. But yet and still, what they push in the school books and everywhere is the one on your right. All right? Other notables of ancient Egypt was the mother of Akhenaten, Queen T. It says here, sculptured head of Queen T displays traits matching the mummy at the far left. A sample of the mummy's hair matched that of the hair from a coffinette rite associated with Queen T and found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, her reputed grandson. All right? So that's, you've seen King Tutankhamun or King Tut. Take a look at his grandmother. She looked like she could be anybody's grandmother in here, couldn't she? All right? Now, we still talk getting to the black Christ. All right? Jesus ain't the first one they changed. And it won't be the last one they would try to. That's why we have to be vigilant. That's why we have to be watchful. Okay? So there are some of the personalities from ancient Egypt. Out of Egypt have I called my son. Of course, that's a black and white shot. Looks like somebody that I know. And of course, there's a grandson. Why, he can't help but look like his grandmother. Is it any doubt that these are black people? And there again, we find those colors that were alluded to earlier when he showed us the picture of the Virgin Mother holding the child, right up on the ureus, red, the green, all right? And I'm sure carrying carrying the same symbolic significance. It comes on through time. You just see it in different ways, all right? But anyway, that's King Tutankhamun. And you just saw his grandmother. Him, grandmother, grandboy, 18 years old. All right? And of course, some that were some of the commoners or the soldiers of ancient Egypt. You see, they didn't have just one or two people. They had armies. All right? And you can see each one of these brothers got their own personality. Some are tall, some are short. Some may be what we call today Tutsis. Many of them came from all over Africa. They had 42 nomes, I think it was. Nomes were like embassies representing different countries from all over. Then they, I was looking at a piece, they were talking about the building of the pyramids, and they were wondering how did they get into these small places and all. Well, they would go to the Ituri rainforest, all right, and they had Twa people working there. Twa, that's the people that we call pygmies today. All right? They go into the interior. So it took all kind of Africans to make the place that we call Egypt. It just wasn't one monolithic people. That's why you see them in different shades. And then you have the time of the invasions of outsiders, as was mentioned the other night about the Hyksos people, the shepherd kings who came in. All right? But anyway, these are some more of the inhabitants of ancient Egypt that we don't see a whole lot of. All the movies that we've seen, we don't see them. This is what populated ancient Egypt, Africa, North Africa. All right? Out of Egypt have I called my son. And now, let me share with you here, this is a procession of the races, as we'll call them. A procession of the races. This is from the tomb of Ramesses III, okay? Ra-Mes, the third, all right? Ra-Mes means one born of Ra, all right? Ramesses. And the first one there, of course, this is in the book Civilization of Barbarism, and I'll read that for you. It said, the Egyptian seen by himself, the first one on your left, as seen by himself, black type. The second one there is the Indo-European, or today would be called Asian. Okay? The Indo-European. And C, or the third one, represents the other black people of Africa. The ancient Egyptians saw themselves no different from the other black people of Africa. All right? And then the other one is the one that we call presently today the Semite. All right? The Semite. So there you have the ancient Egyptian during the time of Ramses III as they saw themselves. Then this one as they saw other Africans. This one was the Indo-European. This one it represents the Semite. All right? Or Assyrians, so forth. But there you have, those are the four races that they saw. And as Dr. Kane Felder made in his statement, we want to know where are white people's presence in here when you really know the truth. So there you have the four races as they saw them in the time of Ramses III. All right? This was compliments of Caesar's palace, I think. They had a sister dressed up like out at the palace, that's Caesar's palace, but had her dressed as Cleopatra. All right, that's what that was about. Matter of fact, I cut him out, but that was George Burns standing next to her. But anyway, which is the desire of most of them hard anyway. All right, but that's the scene that we get there. Now, they don't mind telling you out there, and maybe now because we've done some homework, but this is what they dropped on us before. This is what we've been dealing with along those old classic movies, and as you can see, she have all the trappings on up there of Africa. The uraeus up over her head, and the only one that really wore that then was the Queen Hatshepsut. All right? Queen Hatshepsut. That's the same thing you saw up on the uraeus you saw up on Tutankhamun. But these are the faces that they give you. Images, whoever controls image controls imagination. There she is again, Elizabeth Taylor. All right? For the longest, when I grew up, when they said Elizabeth Taylor, I thought of Cleopatra. They said Moses, I thought about Charleston Heston. They said the Pharaoh, I thought about Yul Brynner. That's all I could see in my head, even when I sat in church and they said old Pharaoh, all I could see was Yul Brynner. All right, and they said Moses, all I could see this white man standing up there with that long gray beard, you know what I'm saying, with the two tablets. These are the images that they set in the mind, and it's not innocent either. They've subdued a whole people like this, all right? So it's up to us to dispel this myth. And one thing I want to ask everybody who watches television on a regular basis, or at any time, let me say, whatever you do, don't just sit there passive and listen to it. Please talk back to it. Call it a lie when it's a lie so your children can hear that's a lie, so they can ask why you say that and you can explain it to them. Because if you don't, you will subtly sit there and imbibe all that they're saying, and it will have an effect on you. And like was mentioned earlier, don't think you can sit there and keep imbibing that and handle it. It's going to have an effect on you. That's exactly what they want you to think, is that you can handle it. The safest thing to do is to turn it off. And then they come out and they ask these questions like in Newsweek here, dealing with Afrocentrism. They've given it another name. But this was during the time that the baseline essays were being written and our scholar warriors were at the height of battle here, getting those baseline essays written. So then you had the attack from the other side that came and started to ask the question, was Cleopatra black? Facts or fantasies? A debate rages over what to teach our kids about their roots. Whose kids? We're ambiguous there. Whose kids are they talking about? Well, matter of fact, we rather not even say our kids, our children. Kids are goats. All right? So anytime you start talking about kids, you're talking about goats. And let me tell you, it was said earlier, when you start, whatever you speak out, it's going to have an effect. And you know how goats act? Look at how the children acting now. They keep being referred to as kids. They acting like it. All right? But here it is again, another question in Scientific American. All right? April 1992, the second title under there, a debate. Is an African Eve the mother of us all? Yeah, but is it really debatable based upon what we've come up with so far? And of course, Time Magazine, How Man Became Man. And of course, that anthropologist here is Dr. Louis Leakey, all right? Dr. Louis Leakey with Homo habilis. This is the artist's rendition, the archaeological and anthropological rendition of the artist's rendition of what the earliest man looked like based on fossils that they found. Whether he looked exactly like that or not, we don't know, but one thing we do know, he was melanated. He was a black man, all right? First one to stand up and sneeze and everybody catch a cold, as Dr. Clark say. And of course, some saw this on the slides the other night, but I brought it back again. Newsweek, 1988, the search for Adam and Eve. Scientists explore a controversial theory about man's origin. Why is it so controversial? It's controversial because they found out the truth. We found out about it. They knew it all along. So, you know, it's debatable. Now, all right, tell you the big golden delicious apple up there that he was tempted with. But from that, they came up with a word in the 16th century, all right, that called denigrate. How many of you heard the word denigrate? Denigrate. Denigrate, right. Time we use that word so loosely, I see it in a lot of black scholars writing. I said, do they really know what that word means? Denigrate was fashioned in the 16th century in order, it was an insult. It was, the root word is nigre, N-I-N-E-G-R-E, nigre, all right, which is the root word of where the word nigger came from, all right? And there was that time to denigrate someone meant to literally turn them black, okay? And it was amazing, I looked that up in the etymological dictionary of word origin, and that's what it traces back to the 16th century, and the use of the word nigger, to denigrate, to literally turn somebody black. So I don't use that, I just use the word demean as opposed to denigrate. But anyway, we came along, and as part of this denigration process, all right, was the story of the curse of Ham, which was brought about in the 6th century by Babylonian Talmudic scholars. Talmudic scholars, the Talmud and the Torah are two different things, all right? Has some interesting stuff on the Talmud, but one thing that came out of it was this story that was concocted about how black people got black. All right, I heard that when I was a little boy, and this was told to us by a friend of mine's grandmother, and I took it as quote-unquote gospel if she said it. All right, but anyway, this is the way that the story goes. Now I cannot beget the fourth son, whose children I would have ordered to serve you and your brothers. This is supposedly Noah talking. And it was after an act had been committed, and that act was that he supposedly had been castrated by his son. And so that's why he said, now look at me, you've castrated me. All right? Now I cannot beget the fourth son, whose children I would have ordered to serve you and your brothers. So see, I was going to make them slaves. Now I can't get the fourth one. Therefore it must be Canaan, your firstborn. Who was he talking to? Canaan, as it goes in the story, is the son of who? Ham. And we find out that Ham is really geographical in that it's talking about Ham, Kim, the Kemetic, Egypt, all right? It shall be your first, it must be Canaan, your firstborn. Now where was the land of Canaan at? The land of Canaan is what was known today as Palestine and Israel. That's the land of Canaan. But it must be Canaan, your firstborn, whom they enslaved. Now they didn't enslave Canaanites, so-called. They enslaved African people. All right? But Canaan, your firstborn, whom they enslaved. And since you have disabled me, doing ugly things in blackness of night, Canaan's children shall be born ugly and black. All right? So that's why if we wanted to insult each other growing up the way it had been gotten over to us, we just called each other black. I remember when that was a fighting word. Thank God for James Brown, who came out and said, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. And start standing up for something. All right? But anyway, we started looking into things then. But up until that time, it was an ugly thing to be black. All right? It was a hurting thing. It was like you were cursed. Well, this is what these lies, these are part of the chains that hang on to our head. All right? said, Canaan's children shall be born ugly and black. Moreover, because you twisted your head around to see my nakedness, your grandchildren's hair shall be twisted into kinks. All right? And their eyes red. Again, because your lips jested at my misfortune, there shall swell. And because you neglected my nakedness, you let me go naked, they shall go naked. This is where we get the lie from, that Africans were running naked in the jungle, swinging from limb to limb. Without anybody having been there, we bought into that. And then Hollywood came along and produced the Tarzan series and so forth. So we bought into that. So we didn't want to have nothing to do with Africa, nothing that looked like Africa we wanted to do with. We wanted to have anything to do with. We wanted to identify with what was white. All right? We've been convinced what was white was right. All right? Now, and the male members meaning their male genitalia, their male members shall be shamefully elongated. So this is where the big genitalia for black men come from. All right? Men of this race are called Negroes. And their forefather Canaan commanded them to love theft and fornication, to be banded together in hatred of their masters, and to never tell the truth. Now, who is that? Is that talking about us? Now, it ain't talking about us. That's what you call, psychologically speaking, projection. Projecting what you are off on somebody else. All right? So this is why they had to concoct these stories. And these things were concocted and propagated during the time to justify chattel slavery. Justify the enslavement of African people. You could not let them know, and you couldn't entertain within your own thought that these are the people who gave us the civil and religious principles which governs the universe, which gave us the use of the spoken word, which gave us the arts and the sciences, and then you're going to come around and say that these men love theft and fornication when they gave you not 10 commandments but 147 positive affirmations that they have not committed fornication or adultery, they haven't committed murder. This is what C.L. Barney read and wrote all that he wrote. But we missed it. We missed it. Canaan, to be loved and never to tell the truth. Now, after being told all of that and shown all of that we've seen, they still will come down to this day and age, which this is from January the 7th, 1991, Jet Magazine, to let us know about this. Black white man challenges federal race identity law. When they make the laws, and you have to watch them, make some humdingers. Now, if we didn't have nothing but the picture, and you were a policeman, or you were checking ID, and you saw him, and somebody asked you, what sort of man was it? You said, well, he was a brother. He was a black man. He was an African. Mustafa Hefney, a naturalized American citizen from where? See, we ain't even got to go all the way back 5,000 years. Let's go back 10 years, 10 minutes. A natural from Egypt. Black Egyptians still here. Is waging a battle against the United States government to be legally declared black instead of white. Now, can you see the look on your face? You look at his ID and it says white. What else does that mean? That means he's classified as white, then we lose out on the count. How many more that are black that are classified as white, and then they tell you you're a minority because they control the counting? They make it against the law for you to go out through the country and take a law of how many black people in this country. Don't nobody know that but the President of the United States. And I get into that in the lecture dealing with reparations. All right? It's against the law for anybody to know exactly how many black folks in the country other than the President. Go out and try to take a census and won't they see you arrested. All right? But anyway, against the United States government to be legally declared black instead of white. Hefner, a school teacher in Detroit, for the past 10 years, that was in 91, so this is 2002, 91, that's 10 years, yeah. So he's been there 20 years if he's still teaching. He maintains that my complexion is as dark as most black Americans. Why? Because we're the same people. We related. My features are clearly African. But since he is a naturalized citizen who is from where? Egypt. The United States Department of Immigration Directive number 15, that's a serious number, 15, 5 and 1 is 6, and we're dealing with that time of 666. Everything is based on 6. So is this lie. Classifies him as a white man. The directive, more commonly known as the Race and Ethnic Standards for Federal Statistics and Administrative Reporting, stipulates that any person descending from the original people of Europe, from the original people of the Middle East, all right, that's a recent creation since the UN, of the Middle East or North Africa, are to be classified as white. We don't care how black they are. We don't care how thick and woolly their hair may be. They must be classified as white, because we put the lie out that everything created in Egypt was created by a group of white people. So everybody who come from there and claim that they're descending from the original people of North Africa, we've got to tell them that they are white, regardless of what they look like. So through that classification, what other lies are they controlling? What other chains do they have connected to our heads? But anyway, Heaven is currently conducting a campaign to have Directive 15 altered. Classification as it is done by the United States government provides whites with the legal ground to claim Egypt as a white civilization, Hefner said, adding, "We are fools if we allow them to take this legacy from us." And there is a struggle going on since 1991. I'd like to know how this brother is doing with that. Let's see if I can get in touch with him. Of course, there's one of our angels, gave the concept of winged creatures, winged beings, winged people, angels as they're called. We gave that concept. This is from the tomb of Tutankhamun. And of course, one of the predecessors of Jesus was Moses. Of course, Moses, we understand as an African. And of course, we saw in the scripture where the two sisters was asked, how did they get some help? And they said that an Egyptian helped us. And they were talking about Moses. Well, Sigmund Freud came down with a book called Moses and Monotheism. You can still buy that book. But it's not that publicized. But it's still there. And in Moses and Monotheism, Sigmund Freud stated up here, all right, that by Breasted, an author whose history of Egypt is regarded as authoritative, it is important to notice that his name, Moses, was Egyptian. It is simply the Egyptian word mos, or nes, as it's called, meaning child, or to be born. And in an abridgment of a fuller form of such names as Amen-mos, meaning Ammon, a child, or a child of Ammon, or Ptah-mos, meaning a child of Ptah, or Ptah, a child. These forms themselves being likewise abbreviation for the complete form, Ammon has given a child, or Ptah has given a child. The abbreviation child early became a convenient, rapid form for the cumbrous full name. And the name Mos, called child, is not uncommon on the Egyptian monuments. The father of Moses, without doubt, prefixed to his son's name that of an Egyptian god like Ammon or Ptah. And this divine name was gradually lost in current usage, till the boy was called just Moses. The final S is an addition drawn from the Greek translation of the Old Testament. It is not in the Hebrew, which has Moshe. But that's one of the predecessors of Jesus, an African. They know that. Then when we get here over in Poland and over in Spain and different European countries, as you can see this beard that they are carrying, and up here is the black Jesus. And one sister who does a presentation dealing with that tells about how they walk in that procession, and during that procession, as they walk, they're chanting, "We want God. We want God." And look at who they're holding up. Now, they know that over in Europe. They know that in Europe. And there they are, venerating the black Madonna and Child. That's what it is. You can see the black Madonna, the tallest thing right at her breast, is the crown of the Christ child, the black bambino, as they call him. And of course, here's one, I think that it was in Time magazine, and they've been toying with this thing, putting it out to see what we would get from it. And unfortunately, many don't even read these different magazines that they put this in. See, they put them in magazines. They won't print it. Why didn't we see this in Ebony? Why didn't we see that in Ebony? We should see everything we've seen here in the last 2 days at some point in time in Ebony, in Essence, in Jet. Right, Jet Black. But anyway, it's called Details of Our Lady of Zestachwa. That's in Poland. This picture is in Poland, and guess where else it hangs? This black mother and child. And I was wondering if they got this from a Yoruba woman, because I saw these markings down here, and I said, this is pure African here. But as far as they're concerned, that's God and his mother. All right? With the halo. That's where else it hangs. You see it hanging up on the wall in that picture? That's the bedroom of the Pope at the Vatican City. He knows this is a black woman. All right? And where you saw this is from, I think, his hometown or somewhere close to his hometown in Poland. Okay? But that's it. And there it is again, right next to his bed. That's his bedroom, and that's his prayer altar, and that's a window that overlooks a balcony from his bedroom. You remember he was waving that time after he got shot and all, and that's what was in the room there. They would dare show you that on the Major 3, as they call it. All right? And it says here again, taken from some excerpts from Gascon, who wrote the book, The Christians, which also appeared as a television program, speaks of Ethiopia in this way. It says there's only one country in the world today which has been Christian almost from the start, and in which one can still find monks living with something of the early simplicity, and that is in Ethiopia. Until 1974, Ethiopia was still essentially its own small Christian empire, with a tradition longer than any. Christianity had penetrated its mountain fastness as early as about 340. The imperial title, Lion of Judah, is one of the phrases used for Christ himself in Revelation, and Haile Selassie, the name which Rastafari chose to call himself in 1920, means the might of the Trinity. In other words, Ethiopia, a black country, which the name Ethiopia comes from the Greek Ethiops, meaning a black country, is the oldest Christian country in the world. The oldest Christian country in the world. So how did Rome get to be the head of the Christian world? All right? It was Ethiopia the oldest. Matter of fact, the Romans went to Ethiopia and Egypt to get what they got, to create and recast, as it said earlier, in that European mold of European culture, the Christianity that you and I have been fed. Or rather, was it Christendom, as Constantine brought it in 325 A.D. at the Council of Nicaea, all right, where they formulated this Christianity that we know today. It took 750 years to get it to the form that we know of today, all right? So it will take longer than just a couple of hours for us to unravel all of this and really see it. So that's why we have to do it over and over and come back and do series of these things, because we're talking about peeling the onion here, y'all, and getting to the bottom of these lies, taking these chains loose. But anyway, that was quoted by Father Martin de Porres, all right? And of course, other people in Ethiopia, this is one artist rendition of a famous person that we know called the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba, or Sheba before that was known as Saba. Saba is in southern Arabia. I had the opportunity to go to Arabia. and I saw some of the indigenous people of Arabia, and they were blacker than the inside of a football. I mean, fascinating black. Matter of fact, I went in one shop, a brother was there. I mean, he looked like, I mean, just raw, regal looking. He was sitting on top of a desk, and he had on an all-white outfit, all right, and a white kufi. And he looked at me, and he smiled, and just looked like the sky lit up. I said, boy, this is really amazing. And he's of the original people there, especially from southern Arabia, where the queen of Sheba, or Saba, whose name was Makeda, all right? And you've heard about the affair with with the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, right? Queen Solomon, Sol, it means son of man or man of the sun. All right, showing you that these was all the people who had been blessed or touched or kissed by the sun, as the Greeks call them Ethiops, burned faces. They got some sun. But this was an artist rendition I thought was real nice looking of Makeda, all right? And of course, that's a modern day picture of somebody from the same area, all right? This is a sister from Harare in Ethiopia, the Harare province, all right, in Lower Ethiopia. But we still here, y'all. Ain't going nowhere. Whenever they tell you these things were built by this mysterious civilization, or what happened to this group of people, they vanished. Whenever they say that on these specials and all, documentaries so-called, understand that 9 times out of 10, when they talk like that, they were black people. And they wondered what happened to them. I always say, we still here. We just ain't there no more. You run us out of there, so we up here now. All right? And of course, this is an ancient rendition from Ethiopia of Jesus as they knew him. All right? You see the Coptic cross in his arm, and this was Jesus as they knew him. Now, we're talking about the oldest Christian church in the world, all right, from Ethiopia. And as you can see, those giveaway telltale signs of what? Those beautiful full soup coolers. The only way white people get those now, I have some more slides I started to put in, but it's too much. But shows how that they were getting silicone shots in their lips, and then they would hook on bustles onto their backside to make them look like they had some hips, because the men were going to Africa, Stanley Livingston and all of them, and seeing these beautiful black Venuses, they call them. And they couldn't get their minds off of them, so the white women had to find some kind of way to attract their attention. Say, if that's what you like, then I'll put some on. So they went and had these big hoop skirts made in what they call a bustle, and they would hook it on right here, and it would look like they had, you know what I'm saying, some back. All right, but they want to tell you that that's not something that they desire, when they desired it all along. So in their desiring to be like you got to understand that you are blessed. You are blessed above all men on the face of the earth. And as the brother said earlier, we have a higher mission than seeing whether it's good being black or white. We got too many witnesses. And of course, over in Spain, they knew what Jesus looked like. Or all that they ever knew was that he was black. These are some statuettes in Spain. There is the black Madonna and Child. There's baby Jesus right there. They knew it in Spain. Again, they knew it in Spain. This is an statue here with the crown of thorns, still symbolizing and showing a black man. And here's another one. Spain was full of them. They said, well, maybe the Moors brought those there. You got to understand, the Moors were Muslims. They wasn't Christians. They didn't deal in Christian iconography. They were Muslims. So it didn't have to do with the Moors as the Moors, but it still had to do with black people, as the Moors are. Moor was the name given to the black people there in Spain. They built Spain. They gave Europe the first university they ever had. That introduced soap and bath houses to take baths. They introduced how to wear underwear. All right? And how not to have sex with sheep. That's where gonorrhea comes from. The gonococcus bacteria, it comes from sheep. Well, of course, there's no disease in sheep, but when it crosses cross species, we got a problem with it. All right? So all of this went down, and there's a lot more out of that whole Moorish occupation in the Andalusia, as it was called, the Iberian Peninsula, which today comprises Portugal and Spain. Okay? But anyway, they're the ones that brought that in. But there was another set as Christian, and not just black folks, but the white people knew it too. As they chanted, "We want God." There's another one from Spain. Many of them in Spain. You can go to Italy and find them. And of course, this is a deacon from the Coptic Church. And he's holding the Bible open, showing you this Ethiopian angel, Ethiopian Jesus. You see what I'm saying? Or the black one, the black Christ. All right? People say, well, color don't make no difference. It don't make no difference. Then why did they change it? Right. Whoever controls image controls imagination. And of course, Jesus the Christ from J.A. Rogers was shown as the good shepherd in all of his blackness, favorite of the early Christians of Europe, when all pictures and statues of Jesus were shown as black. This one is from the 4th century CE. CE meaning of the Christian era. All right? Mosaic pavement at Aquileia. And there you have it. A mosaic, the Good Shepherd. And of course we have some writings here from the Cambridge Encyclopedia and also from the author of a book called Anacalypsis, and this is Godfrey Higgins. Now at the top it says Christ as an Ethiopian on a coin of Justinian during his second reign. Justinian came into reign in Rome in the 4th century. It was the 4th and 6th century A.D. during the reign of Justinian and Theodosius that Europe went into what is known as the Dark Ages, because what did they do? They shut out the African mystery schools, so-called. They didn't want no more of the teaching there. The Catholic Church had taken over. All right? And your most learned and scholarly men were those who were the priests that were carrying on about the world being flat. They couldn't go out and venture out far because it was flat. And they didn't change that idea until the Moors came in and taught them from globes. Until they began again to study the writings of the ancient Egyptians who described the world, the earth, as a goose egg. That's where we get the Mother Goose stories from. All right? But whatever the fact, this coin with the straight-haired Justinian on the obverse side places beyond doubt the belief that Jesus Christ was a Negro, as they so call it. From Godfrey Higgins' Anacalypsis, Volume 1, Book 4, it says, in all the Romish countries of Europe, all of them that Rome had something to do with, was over. All the Romish countries of Europe, in France, Italy, Germany, etc., have some other pictures of the patron saint of Germany. Is Saint Maurice. The word or name Maurice means like a Moor. And when you look at his picture in J.A. Rogers' book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, you will see St. Maurice standing there with the same eagle that stood on top of the Reichstag on top of his head. As a black man with knight's armor on in Germany. St. Maurice. In Germany, etc. The God Christ, as well as his mother, are described in their old pictures and statues to be black. The infant God in the arms of his black mother, his eyes and drapery white, is himself perfectly black. Their real blackness is not to be questioned for a moment. And this is from Godfrey Higgins' Anacalypsis. For those who've never heard of it, very authoritative. A lot of research has been done based on Godfrey Higgins' work. So there you have it. Say he's perfectly black, and the blackness is not to be questioned for a moment. There you have it. And these are organic documents and coins and so forth. Irrefutable. Look at the peppercorn hair around his head. So-called. But this is what they drop on us after all of that. Pope Martin V commissioned Michelangelo to paint the Sistine Chapel and some other pictures, and he used his cousin as one of the mouths, and so this is what we got. This became your Lord and your Savior, and also your oppressor, and also your enslaver. All right? So that's what they gave us. And unfortunately, you still find this on many of the walls in the home. You still find this in black churches, so-called, right up on the wall. I noticed down at Ebenezer when, what's his name? Gore? Was it Gore who spoke there? All right, during one of the celebrations, Gore who spoke there, and what did they make sure they had prominently displayed in the background? A picture of your Lord and your Savior. Now, what do you think what kind of psychodynamics is involved with this? With your children, with coming up seeing this, where everybody that look like that look like who? Look like Jesus. And it says that I and my Father are one, so if they look like Jesus, they must look like God. Is that why the last poet said, or you will die next, because the white man has got a what? God complex. Now, after all we read, and saw, I put all that first, so when we get to here, now, doesn't that seem very ridiculous, to say the least? But, in closing out here, let me read just one piece here from Santa Biblia, the Bible here, the King James Version. And it tells us, it gives us in Revelations a description, all right, of this being, this person who's called the Ancient of Days. And it said he looked, and his voice was as the voice of many waters, all right. And I just want to read that, all right. And it says here, and the clothes and the sun. I should have had it marked up. What chapter is that in? Somebody help me.
What is it in?
The description. Hair like lamb's wool. Had a voice like many waters. Okay. But anyway, we're going. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I got the book here. If anybody doubt me, we'll find it when it's over. But anyway, now, does that fit the description of what I'm trying to find here now? Hair like lamb's wool. Feet like it been burned, feet been burned in a furnace, like brass. Now, when you burn brass in a furnace, it don't shine gold, it gets sooty. Or they're black. All right? Hair like lamb's wool. Skin or feet like it's been burned, brass burned in a furnace. Then it says that, remember how it said their eyes would be red? Most dark, black, African people, their eyes have that redness to it. This fits the description. This doesn't fit the description. Even as we set up and read that in church and listened to the preacher harp and go on and read that his eyes was a flame of fire and his hair was like lamb's wool. Don't look nothing like that up there. This or this. The truth or a lie. All right? But there we have it. Michelangelo's cousin or your brother. I thought that was good. When I first saw that, I said, that's it. And then they add more trappings to it. The NAACP got together in Oakland, California, and started protesting because you didn't have no black Santa Clauses. All right? They protested harder and marched harder to get a black Santa Claus than they did to raise the issue, why is the lie being told about Jesus? You see, because St. Nicholas is established in history. If you read the proceedings from the Nicene Council of Bishops, you can still get it. You can go to the library in any theological seminary and walk in there and read about it. It tells you all about it. You ain't got to have a degree. I didn't have one. I still don't have one. It's called History of the First Council of Nice. Or it's called the Nicene Council of Bishops. All right? 325 A.D. with the life of Constantine. Yeah. But I tell you what, when we finish here, you're welcome to come up and look at them and write them down, get all the titles you want. But this is what I try to do, because I can't tell you everything. I can only spark your interest, give you food for thought and grounds for further research. And you'll find in here that Nicholas of Myra is in here. His name was Bishop Nicholas. And he was a Roman Catholic priest in southern Turkey, or Myra. All right? Now, it just so happened it told about some of his actions at the Nicene Council, and that was a group led by one Eusebius who was about universal truth. He didn't think that it should just be hoarded among those ones that would learn and keep everybody else in the dark. So that became a big split, and he was exiled. And so this is when Constantine had this big split in the kingdom. He had to call them together, and that's when they stopped killing Christians and became Christian, and they took control of it and went from Christianity to Christendom, a political system. But anyway, the Bishop of Myra was named Nicholas. All right, when he died, he was they called it canonized or made a saint, and he was called Saint Nicholas. And they made him the patron saint of pawnbrokers, bankers, and thieves. Pawnbrokers, bankers, and thieves. Now they say this is the real thing. The only black that I have found associated with St. Nicholas in the myth was a little black elf who is Dr. Shaka Musa Bar Shango like to describe as the HNIC in Santa's health workshop. His name was Pels Nicole. That's the only time anybody black was mentioned in association with that myth. But anyway, as established in history, Nicholas of Myra was very real, and he was not a black man. All right? And oh yeah, it tells in the proceedings here how he's the one who stood up in the proceeding and slapped Eusebius upside the head when he wouldn't agree with what was going on. Good old St. Nick. All right? But this is what they wanted. So, now that you're fighting for a black Santa Claus and you're content with a white Jesus. Tell me that ain't twisted. All right? But anyway, this is why this Christ Conference, Black Christ Conference, has been presented. And I'm glad that I could be a part and sort of summing up what was going on. We need this information because information, knowledge is power, and information is control. Not only did white people colonize the world, but as Dr. Clark said, they colonized information about the world. And that information, if we don't retrieve, if we don't recapture and recover and give back to our children, then they'll grow up disconnected from all of this, and we'll continue, I guess, another 40 years in the wilderness, or take another walk around Mount Sinai, as they say, until you get it right. But we will get it right. We didn't come here for nothing. Got a mission. So I'll close out by saying, may the faith and love of our strongest ancestors knew return twofold unto all of you. Give thanks. Amen. Do I have a time for a question? Anybody have a question they'd like to ask me?
On the white issue?
Yes, sir.
I've seen documents that a brother put that on his application for his race. White.
Right. Oh, okay. You talking about that?
The EOC in Washington, D.C. And that's what the information said. The rich man of Europe can constitute himself as being white.
All right. Well, you see, that's what they say.
Right.
They write the law. They write the law. Matter of fact, in codifying slavery in the Constitution, they say the 13th Amendment freed you. They tricksters. Said neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. We can get you and make you a slave if you commit a crime. So look at your private prison industries now. So they got all kind of tricks woven in there. But it's up to us to take and dispel that lie. It's up to us to take, it's up to us to join in that struggle with that brother. His fight is our fight. All right? So that's what we have to do. They say I'm a minority, I say you lying. You the minority. You represent less than 10% of this world's population, and I'm your biggest nightmare because I possess the power to genetically annihilate you. And you have to tell them just like that, brother, know it. They'll back down off of that. Matter of fact, don't say that around him. And like it says, to speak truth in a time of great deception is a revolutionary act within itself. Sure is. Any other questions?
What do you think it's going to take to change the consciousness of the mass of black Christians in the world today?
Doing what we're doing now. Doing what we're doing right now. You know, when you begin to get to some of the leadership, if you can get to the leadership, see, much of the leadership, black Christian leadership, become gatekeepers. You know, they're gatekeepers to the graveyard. You know, you talk about the valley of the dry bones and all, they're keeping them, you know, it's some words that can go and speak to them dry bones and make them live again. Make them stand upright, come from that dead level to the living perpendicular, to stand upright, to think upright. You know, and this is what it's going to take. This is what it's going to take. It's going to take disagreeing with some things. You know, to just go along, just to get along, ain't going to cut it no more. Like I said, the best way for evil to triumph is that good men stand around and do nothing. Rest assured it'll go on. You know, the truth is more powerful than a lie, but the falsehood will prevail if truth don't fight back. Passive truth ain't going to cut it. It's got to be active truth. We've got to take that action. By the way, I was a pastor for 7 years. So you can be gotten to. In Columbia, South Carolina. I was a pastor for 7 years, and I heard Dr. Ben one time and was never the same. That's how truth hit me. And let me tell you, when you talking about some agonizing nights, wrestling with those dichotomies. Ooh, man, y'all just don't know. It wasn't like, oh, okay, that's the truth. I'm walking out of that. It's some stuff to overcome. Brainwashing is a monster. Now you're talking about coming up off of everything that you've been told. You went to school, got your $1 million theological education, and find out they didn't really give me the right stuff. I can't admit that. Some have that problem. And you're going to have them, they'll go ahead and stick with a lie rather than the truth because they feel they have too much invested in the lie. All right? But eventually, I walked away from it all. I told them, if I can't tell you the truth, I said, let me let y'all hear what I heard. And I got Dr. Ben in my church. I said, I can't tell you like he tell you. I got to get him here, and I still have it on video. Listervelt Middleton on his program for the people out of Columbia, South Carolina. And he's responsible for us knowing a lot of these scholars and things that they have espoused on that we know today. But that's what it's going to take. And there are some that can be gotten to. I got to a couple of friends of mine. Shared the information and knowledge with them, turned them on to the scholars who knew in the books and the information. They studied, and before you know it, they were out. But what were they doing? Were they quitting the church? Were they quitting God? Were they just giving up on? No. They had to step out and regroup. You have to regroup.